Hello, welcome to another edition of the VOD Weekly News Recap. I am Glorious Haddijatou NJIE. Good evening. Now let's look at the headlines. Gambia hosts the 8th Regional Workshop of ACE Impact Project. Finance Minister presents budget estimates. Gambia to host African Religious Ministers and Ulamas Conference. YEP inaugurates a packaging hub for small and medium-sized businesses. Climate activists call on countries to stop funding new gas projects in Africa. 2 killed in second deadly Kenya building collapse in 3 days. Interpol SA arrests Israeli fugitive wanted for several attempted murders. WHO announced clinical trial of Ebola vaccine in Uganda. Donald Trump announced bid to run for US president in 2024. UK Deputy Prime Minister requests investigation into complaints about his behavior. Poland missile unlikely to have been fired from Russia, Biden says. Those were the headlines. Now let's look at the news in details. His Excellency President Adama Barrow on Tuesday, 15 November, officially opens the 8th Regional Workshop of the ACE Impact Project at the Sadauda Kairaba Jawara International Conference Center, Gambia in Bijilo. In his speech, the President highlighted that the workshop is organized at a time when the government of the Gambia is making concerned efforts to transform the higher education system through reforms that put youth at the forefront of national development. Secretary General of the Association of African Universities, Professor Olusola, extended a special gratitude to the President, the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, Honorable Professor Goment, and the Gambian government for hosting the regional workshop and steering committee meeting for the African Higher Education to the Center of Excellent Projects. Mrs. Faye, representative, the Gambia World Bank, also spoke during the event and stated that the ACE Impact Project is the bedrock of social and economical growth.
I would like to express my sincere thanks to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia. Indeed, education is the bedrock of social and economic growth. Building a stronger higher education sector is not only key for Africa's development, but it is a worthwhile goal and to invest in human capital. As we have seen globally, if it's done right, investments in skills development at both the pre-tertiary and tertiary levels and capacity building in research have the potential to yield tremendous development benefits across various sectors and to lift not only individuals but entire nations out of poverty.
That building a stronger higher education sector is not only key for Africans' development, but it is a worldwide to invest in human capital. As she said, if it's done right, investment in skill development at the pre-tertiary and tertiary levels and capacity building in research will have the potential to yield tremendous development benefits across various sectors and to leave not only individual but entire nations out of poverty. Minister of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, Professor Per Goment, also said that this meeting symbolizes decisions to address challenges through education and decisions to compete in the global market research and innovation.
The divergent experts from different academia and industry sectors in this meeting symbolize African institutions' readiness to address our challenges through education and research. I encourage participants to take advantage of the workshop and establish the right to help develop Africa's higher education institutions to compete in the global market in research and innovation.
As the African continent continues to redress its capacity gaps, particularly in the area of human resource development, nothing is more relevant than working towards building the capacity of African universities.
The Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Sidi Keita, on Monday, 14th November 2022, presented the estimated revenue and expenditures of the Gambia for the fiscal year 2023 to the National Assembly. Honorable Keita revealed that the 2023 budget estimate has been prepared based on the objectives of continued recovery and building on an inclusive and resilient economy. The 2023 budget is prepared with minimal new revenue measures with respect to the private sector following the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic and the devastating impact of the Russia-Ukraine war that affected businesses across the country, he said. Only the fiscal front, he stated, that revenue has registered a low outturn that is mostly as a result of grant disbursement of only 30% of the project yearly outturn of $13.6 billion. The project disbursements of budget support grant for European Union of $23 million and African Development Bank of $7 million did not materialize. The increase in global oil price leading to fuel subsidies to the tune of $1.3 billion.
As a result of lower performance of domestic revenue collection and translate to tighter budgetary control. On the debt service, the year-end projection of $3.48 billion will overshoot the revised budget by $442 million, and this is mainly relating to the increase in the domestic and external debt service due to the appreciation of the US dollars and the increasing cost of domestic debt. Personnel costs as at year-end is estimated to be $386 billion, below the revised budget of $5.75 billion compared to a projected outturn of $5.36 billion. The prudent and close monitoring and rationalization of expenses in the light of lower than expected performance of the revenue contributed to the realization of these savings. Honorable Speaker, on the external front, the balance of payment continued to deteriorate and being under pressure on the account of the ongoing global shocks. Imports of goods increased by 12.9% in the first half of 2022, mainly reflecting an increase in the imports of energy, food items, and vehicles. Similarly, exports increased by 23% in the first half of 2022. The deterioration in the trade balance resulted in a higher current account deficit of 1.3% of the GDP in the first half of 2022, relative to a deficit of 0.5% of GDP in the corresponding period of 2021.
As of the end of September 2022, also contributed to the low revenue outturn. Honorable Keita said the outturn from revenue and grants is projected to reach $29.9 billion by the end of 2022. However, as at the end of September, the annual outturn for revenue and grants stood at $14.4 billion, representing only 40% of the projected outturn. Now let's have a run-through of what happened in the courts this week. In the case of Abubakar Jawara versus Momodu Sabali on Monday was at the High Court Annex in Banjul for the beginning of a civil suit filed against him by renowned businessman Abubakar Jawara. The plaintiff's counsel, Drame, told the court that the people may make statements likely to undermine the integrity of the court, which he said the defendant's supporters make. In response to that, Justice Becker of Banjul High Court Annex has asked everybody who is not directly interested in the civil case involving Abubakar Jawara, the plaintiff, and Momodu Sabali, the defendant, to stay away from his court. The case was adjourned to 17th January 2023 for mentioning before the defendant is yet to file their defense, as they still have 10 days to file it.
Well, place yi akela yaakaar nañ ne diga mooy dox te man maa diga ànd ak fii so aw ma benn ragal aw ma benn jël inshallah li nga gis mbooloo bi ñu la toppa Sabali, what is it? That's the name. It's called Momodu Sabali, man of the people, nothing else.
Momodu Sabali was served a writ of summons to appear before the High Court in Banjul to respond to a civil suit filed by Abubakar Jawara. The plaintiff is claiming damages of defamation and slander, seeking an order directing the defendant to issue an unreserved apology to plaintiff, an order for the defendant to pay plaintiff $8 million in damages, amongst others. Now moving on to Kumbasinyan versus the state. Kumbasinyan, a resident of Bakau Newtown, was on Wednesday, 16th November, arraigned before Justice C.D. Jabate at the High Court in Banjul. The prosecution alleged that Kumbasinyan on the 14th September 2022 at Friendship Hostel in Bakau, with malice aforethought, caused the death of one Momodu Jallo by cutting his stomach with an object. Kumba pleaded not guilty to the charge, and the prosecution, led by Senior State Counsel Jaju, opened the prosecution's case and called the first witness, Deputy Superintendent Fode Konta, Station Officer of Bakau Police, to testify. DSP Fode Konta testified that on the 14th September 2022, he received a phone call from a police officer that there was a murder incident at Friendship Hostel in Bakau. The witness further testified that upon receipt of the information, he visited the place with his team of police officers and eventually met the receptionist, who led them to room 111, and therein they found a motionless body laid on the floor in a pool of blood. The witness told the court that thereafter, the team went on collecting evidence after the arrival of the CRO officer, who is an expert on fingerprints. He said they conducted a search and found a wallet containing Visa card bearing Momodu Jallo, 2 filters of cigarette, detached shaving stick, a pillow placed on the stomach of the deceased. He testified that when the pillow was lifted, they found the deceased was caught with the intestines out, black clots forced into his mouth. DPS Contest said, after collecting evidence and checking on the CCTV, which was not functioning, a volunteer called him aside and told him that he knows who killed Jallo, and he named Kumbasinyan. The witness told the court that he got his team and went with the informant to the accused resident in Bakau. DPS testified that upon arrival at her residence, she was arrested and was taken to Friendship Hostel, where they proceeded to room 111. He said whilst holding her hand, he realized she was shivering, and after examining the deceased, they proceeded to Bakau Police, where the case file was opened and handed over to the Serious Crime Unit for further investigation. The hearing continues on Friday, where the witness was cross-examined by the defense lawyer. Gambia to host African Religious Ministers and Ulamas Conference. Haddijatou report.
Under the auspices of President Adama Barrow, the government of the Gambia will host the Conference of African Ulamas and Religious Affairs Minister on the 6th of December 2022. The conference is organized by the Muslim World League in partnership with the government under the theme Promotion of Peace, Understanding, Unity among Communities and Nations. Underlining the theme is the belief that extending the bridges of dialogue and cooperation is the only way to realize a world full of peace, justice, and coexistence. It is expected that 1,500 people, including international and domestic delegates, will attend the event, which will be held at the Sadora Kairaba Jawara International Conference Center in Bijilo. A number of heads of state and other high-profile guests from the religion and beyond are also expected to attend. Haddijatou reporting for VOD.
The Youth Empowerment Project YEP and its partners on Tuesday, November 15, 2022, inaugurated a new packaging hub for small and medium-sized businesses at the Gambian Horticultural Enterprise Processing Center in Banjulinding, West Coast Region. The EU-funded Youth Empowerment Project YEP initiated packaging programs. It's geared towards improving the packaging capacity of small and medium-sized enterprises, particularly youth and women-owned businesses in the Gambia. In his welcoming remark, he, the managing director of the Gambia Horticultural Enterprise, Mr. Momodu Sise, said, "Packaging is a basic necessity for every product. Packaging serves to contain identity, description, protection displays, promote, and make the product marketable and keep it clean and safe."
They provide for livelihoods for owners and create most jobs. They are an important driver for economic growth, innovation, and product development.
Speaking at the same ceremony, the Minister of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment, Baboucarr Diouf, said the government of the Gambia, through his ministry, is committed to supporting policies, programs, and activities that improve the competitiveness of Gambian products locally and internationally.
I will gladly tell you that this initiative will not only help us as entrepreneurs in these generations, but generations to come. And it will also pave a way for people and for the young generations that want to venture into agriculture, agro-food processing, and value addition. And also, it will make the Gambia attractive when it comes to, partnerships with other countries, because packaging is key when it comes to agro-processing.
He added that his ministry has rolled out several support measures to boost the growth of small businesses. The EU-funded Turkey Feed program and the Youth Empowerment Project have been a critical partner. EU Ambassador and head of the delegation of the European Union to the Gambia, Corrado, said these initiatives are very important to the European Union because they are in line with their commitment to boost the private sector. Now let's look at the news across our borders in detail. Activists attending the COP27 climate conference in Egypt held a demonstration on Tuesday, calling on countries to stop funding new gas projects in Africa. Faced with an energy crisis because of Russian war in Ukraine, Western nations have been looking elsewhere to shore up their supply. If your country is breaking a promise not to finance new fossil fuels development overseas by investing in new gas infrastructure in Africa, then you are not a climate leader. Ugandan climate activist Vanessa told delegates at an event on clean energy transition hosted by Britain on the sidelines of the summit. Countries agreed in the 2015 Paris Climate Accord to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, if possible.
If your country is breaking a promise not to finance new fossil fuel development overseas by investing in new gas infrastructure in Africa, then you are not a climate leader. If your country's planned expansion of oil and gas development would by itself put the 1.5 degrees Celsius target out of reach, then you are not a climate leader. So I ask each of the leaders here today, will you be on the right side of history?
Vanessa was one of many African climate activists taking aid at world leaders who continue to back new fossil fuel projects despite warning from scientists. The Russian-Ukraine crisis has caused increased damage of gas in Africa. There is a new project now, the Nigerian-Moroccan gas pipeline project, taking gas from Nigeria through Morocco to Europe. And we're saying we do not want that to happen, said Nigerian climate activists.
The Russia-Ukraine crisis has caused increased demand for gas in Africa. There is a new project now, you would have heard of the Nigerian-Morocco gas pipeline project, taking gas from Nigeria through Morocco to Europe. And we are saying we don't want that to happen.
Non-gas Africa! Non-gas Africa!
2 killed in second deadly Kenya building collapse in 3 days. Isatuso reports.
A second tragedy in 3 days. In the outskirts of Kenya's capital, a multi-story building under construction collapsed on a neighboring home, killing at least 2 people on Thursday, November 17th, authorities said. Construction authorities have warned of unsafe buildings. Frederick's parents didn't make it alive. Mom and dad were inside the house when the building started, then collapsed on them. When the ambulance came to rescue them, they found them already dead and the construction was not fully completed. 3 other people have been rescued alive from the family home that was next to the collapsed building located in Ruega Subui. This is not the first story, or rather instance, in the course of this 1 week, we had 2 buildings that have collapsed. "We have lost innocent lives," resident Willie lamented. After building collapsed in Kenya in 2015, the presidency ordered an audit to see if the country's buildings were up to code. The National Construction Authorities found that 58% of the buildings in Nairobi were unfit for habitation. Haddijatou NJIE reporting for VOD.
South African police have announced the arrest of an Israeli suspected of belonging to a mafia gang and wanted for attempted homicide. The 46-year-old man is associated with a major crime organization called Haddijatou, named after brothers Meir and Yitzhak, who were extradited more than a decade ago to the United States and had been the subject of an interlocked red notice since 2015, the police said in a statement on Thursday. Israel's most wanted man, according to South African police, was arrested in the early hours of the morning along with 7 other suspects in a house in Brighton and after went north of Johannesburg. Photos and videos of the arrest shared by the police have circulated widely on social networks, showing shocked men in shorts or pajamas, sitting on the front, hitting their face or lying on their stomachs, their hands with plastic handcuffs. According to information from their Israeli counterparts, the South African police say the main suspect belongs to a notorious gang included in drug trafficking, extortion, and other criminal activities. The WHO announced on Wednesday that 3 trial vaccines for Ebola will arrive in Uganda next week. The announcement was made during the G20 meeting in Indonesia. Today, I'm pleased to announce that the WHO Committee of External Experts has evaluated 3 candidate vaccines and agreed that all 3 should be included in a planned trial in Uganda. WHO and Uganda's Minister of Health has condemned and accepted the committee's recommendation. We accept that the first dose of vaccine to be shipped to Uganda next week, announced Tedros, WHO Director General. An Ebola outbreak in Uganda was declared in late September. Since then, Ebola claimed at least 55 deaths. We ideally hope that this epidemic goes away, and this epidemic is controllable without vaccine. It's clear that we can get containment without vaccines, but it is also clear from the Congo experience that we can get to control, make quicker using effective vaccine, and that's where the answer we need to get.
Today, I'm pleased to announce that a WHO committee of external experts has evaluated 3 candidate vaccines and agreed that all 3 should be included in the planned trial in Uganda. WHO and Uganda's Minister of Health have considered and accepted the committee's recommendation. We expect that first dose of vaccine to be shipped to Uganda next week,
said Michael Ryan, WHO Health Emergency Director. 2 of the 3 trial vaccines were developed in the UK, and the 3rd trial vaccine comes from the US. Now let's look at the international news in detail. From the moment he left office almost 2 years ago, speculation with Rick that he intended to return. Now his White House bid is official. After the former president made the declaration in a speech at Montenegro, former U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday announced his intention to run for the White House once again in 2024 presidential elections. I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States, Trump told audience at his Montenegro club launching in his bid. America's comeback starts right now. Earlier in the day, his aides filed.
To make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Paperwork with the U.S. Federal Election Commission setting up a committee called Donald J. Trump for President 2024. UK Deputy Prime Minister Rabat requests investigation into complaints about his behavior. Haddijatou NJIE reports.
Dominic Raab is facing an investigation into his behavior after 2 formal complaints were made against him. The Deputy PM has been accused of bullying officials when he held previous government roles in a string of media reports over the past weeks. He denied the allegation, but when formal complaints were lodged early on Wednesday, he asked Rishi Sunak to launch an inquiry into his own conduct. He said he would thoroughly rebut and refute the claims against him. In a letter of Mr. Sunak, Mr. Raab said the complaints related to his time as Justice Secretary and Foreign Secretary under former Prime Minister Robert Johnson. He added he had never tolerated bullying and had always sought to reinforce and empower civil servants. Mr. Raab's letter came ahead of Prime Minister's questions, where he stood in for Mr. Sunak, who is at the G20 summit in Indonesia. Aissatou Sow reporting for VOD.
Joe Biden has said the missile that landed in Poland, killing 2 people, was unlikely to have been fired from Russia due to its trajectory. The US president was speaking at the G20 meeting in Berlin, Indonesia, after convening an emergency meeting of Western leaders to discuss the explosion on NATO territories that has the potential to take a war in Ukraine into a new, even more dangerous dimension. Asked if the missile was fired from Russia, Biden said,
"We agreed to support Poland's investigation into the explosion in rural Poland near the Ukrainian border, and I'm going to make sure we figure out exactly what happened. Our sympathy goes out to apparently 2 people were killed, and then we're going to collectively determine our next step as we investigate and proceed."
There is preliminary information that contests that. I don't want to say that until we completely investigate, but it is unlikely in the mind of its trajectories that it was fired from Russia, he added. But we will see, we will see. The Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs discussed the missile as a Russia-made missile, a phase that could include S-300 ground-to-air missiles in the possession of Ukraine. We agreed to support Poland's investigation into the explosion in rural Poland, near the Ukrainian border, but they're going to make sure we figure out exactly what happened, Biden said. That's all we have for you today. Until we come your way again, I am Gloria Haddijatou NJIE on the VOD Weekly News Recap. Have a good evening and thanks for watching.